Alright, so here it is, a Knight KP50 stereo preamp. I've removed the cover, and currently it does run, works. Significantly lower output on one of the channels, like 20 dB down, so pretty significant. Measured all of my voltages and everything, and it seems like it would benefit quite a bit from most of those coupling capacitors being replaced, the power filter capacitors being replaced, and those two ugly selenium diodes being replaced. So I'm going to go ahead and replace those with some silicone diodes. I'm thinking I'm going to remove those can caps and restuff them with electrolytics and then glue them back together to keep the original appearance. Then I'm going to replace all the capacitors on these boards, which is going to be a little bit of a nightmare because there are each one of these switches here has about 500,000 connections per, so it's going to be a pretty involved process, but at the end I think this should be a nice little piece of gear. It's got two 12AY7s and four 12AU7s, I believe, or AT7s. I'd have to go look. It's been a while since I pulled them out, but that's the plan. Okay, so what have we done so far? I removed the selenium rectifiers here, which are notorious for when they go bad, going very bad. Got a tag strip in here that I've just thrown in. I'm going to put the two diodes in there over here to replace them. And then I removed that cap there, unwired it, and let's see. What I did is basically went around this edge with a hacksaw, pulled it out, cleaned out the can a little bit, and now I'm going to drill a few holes in the base, restuff the cap, and then do the same thing with the second one, and we will have the power supply caps and the rectification taken care of. Okay, so a little update here. What I've been doing is meticulously replacing all these capacitors. So you can see the ones that are still there, those big black ones. You can see where I've been replacing them here, here, here. These still need to go. That one needs to go. These were really not the ones I would have chosen had I been thinking about it a little more clearly. I would have gotten either I guess they're called the axial kind, where you get a lead on each one, kind of like, well, sort of like these. But anyway, I think I've replaced about 8 or 9 of them. I still have about 20 some odd to go, and some of them are on this board over here, which has lots of rotary switches on it. And a lot of these boards have these connecting wires to them, and so what I need to do, I'm just going to do this board completely, and then I am going to kind of mount it again so I can do the other one. And then I think the thermistor's already in, and I've got the diodes connected. So I think after that it's just going to be firing it back up and testing a bunch of voltages. Okay, we got a little update here on the Knight preamplifier, stereo preamp. I think I probably already covered the power supply, and then I was working on this board here. This board has these 7 standoffs on it, and so I removed those and replaced all of these. I disconnected accidentally and on purpose some of these little wires, but luckily I have the wiring diagrams and all that stuff, thanks to whoever put those on the internet. And so I wanted to do this board before I did this board, and now I've disconnected everything, and as far as I can tell, I've got this thing free, but it's still not moving, and I think it's bumping into this one. So after spending way too long to put all these standoffs back in, I think I'm going to end up having to remove them so that I can have both boards free at once. While I'm in there, I'm going to go ahead and clean out. You see these very complicated switches and everything for the, I think these are for the equalizer settings and for the source select. So I'm going to have to go ahead and take this back apart, even though I spent the last 30 minutes putting it back together after I changed out all the components. But there is absolutely no way to get to 99% of the components under there without disconnecting that other board. So that's going to take some time. Okay, finally, after struggling with these boards for quite a while, everything's done. So let's see. Tubes have been put back in. Those two caps have been restuffed, and they're not as pretty as they used to be because they each have a little wire twisted around the tabs. But you can see where the diodes were replaced. I did have a little bit of problem with some of these shielded lines having come loose, and had to reroute a few of them. Had to fix a trace down here and here. And when I first fired it back up, I was fine on channel A. Channel B was not working at all. So luckily I was getting signal out of the recorder output, so I was able to look at the schematic, trace everything, and find out that basically I had a bad connection on one of these coupling caps here coming off V3. So fix that pad, and channel B is working fine. And originally, I should have made a video of this, but I just didn't. Originally, when I first got this thing, it was supposedly working. However, channel B was not working very well at all. 20 dB down, basically. And so I decided to replace a bunch of the caps and rebuild the power supply. So here are the old parts. Basically, what are we looking at here? Bunch of capacitors, mainly capacitors, some old electrolytics, selenium diodes in there. That's basically what I replaced. So why don't we set up the tripod here, and we will get some measurements and see how it's doing now that it's all freshened up. Okay, so what I've got set up here is my scope. I'm monitoring both channels. I don't have a load across this right now, just whatever loads in the front end of the oscilloscope, but I'm really not worried about frequency dependence or anything like that. Really what I'm doing is trying to make sure I'm getting equal, more or less, output from both channels, because when I originally bought this thing, it said, they said that it worked fine. I get it home, I find out, no, not quite. Channel B was down about 20% or 20 dB. And so, as I've already said, I rebuilt the power supply, replaced most of the caps, rewired some things, and cleaned a bunch of contacts. So what I've got right now is a signal going through it of 1 kilohertz, and it's set pretty high right now. My output or my input voltage is not quite line level, and right now we're looking at about, let's see here, these things are constantly moving on me, so we're looking at about 0.5, so 1 volt peak to peak right there. And the other one is more, sure looks the same. Here, let's just see this. Oh yeah, that's basically the same right there. I mean, you know, you can basically superimpose them. And again, this thing, to be fair, this should probably be right about here. I could get out the multimeter and just check them to get them exactly lined up, but yeah, we're not we're not seeing much difference there. So looks like this thing is working perfectly now. So it was a lot of work. It was a decent amount of money. But I think it's kind of cool to have one of these vintage preamps, and I couldn't afford the really expensive one, so I'm really glad I got this one. I think I'm going to go upstairs, hook it up, put it in front of my KT88 amplifier, and it'll be nice to really feed that KT88 with a pretty high input signal, because that's definitely what it wants. Alright, so I've moved it upstairs and I flipped it over on its side just to show you guys. Because the controls, I'm not sure how much I showed of them, but it's kind of unique the way they just kind of stick out of the bottom there instead of the back. And so you can see in here there's two new matched 12 AY7s down on the bottom. Those are Electro Harmonics. And then two matched sets, two matched pairs of 12 AU7s. And I had to go to eBay to find these tube shields because only one tube shield came with it. And especially for the phono section, they're extremely important. And then I just have the various and sundry inputs going in from either the CD player, the phonograph, or the Chromecast audio. And you have to get pretty short RCA leads. You can see these are actually kind of bent a little bit because they're a little bit long. So I know some people are into the, real high-end cables. I'm obviously not. And so anyway, this just sits flat on top of the CD player. And I think it sounds great. Let's listen to it. All right, so I have it moved up into my office now. And it's now forming the anchor of my system. I've got the CD player going into the aux input. Behind there I have a Chromecast audio that goes into the tuner section, which has variable input. And I have phono obviously going into phono. And this KT88 amplifier definitely needs a warm input signal. And so that's why a preamp was definitely required. And sometimes you just don't feel like flipping a record every 20 minutes and you want to listen to something else. And so I really needed something like this, and I'm glad I took the time to restore it. This thing sounds amazing. Here it is on the phono. And let's see. Here's the Chromecast audio. On the CD player. So, all in all, I think it sounds very, very good. It was definitely worth the time and the effort. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed watching me restore this.